I am going to introduce the speaker tonight, who's going to be talking on the topic of planning for the future sale of your small business. And it's a very big thing on the minds of many business owners, and it takes years of planning. And I think that bringing a speaker like Curtis Kutnauer of Golden Circle Advisors to this audience is, I think, a wonderful asset, and I think you're going to learn a lot tonight. So I'd like to hand the clicker over to Curtis and let him introduce himself and his background as well.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Yep.
There we go. As Jason mentioned, my main job is I own a business brokerage firm with a partner downstate, and our main business is helping people like yourselves, the business owners, helping them to prepare and transition their business to eventually selling. And so we do business valuations. We help them prepare their business for sale, and then when they're at the point where they're saying, okay, let's go market it, we start marketing it, we find the buyer, and then work throughout that entire process of seeing the business transition from one owner to the next owner. My partner happens to reside downstate, and that's somewhat deliberate. We have an office in Plymouth because what we are seeing a lot of interest of people downstate interested in finding a way to move up here. And so I'm one of those people, and so that's one of the reasons why we have two offices, because we see that as an interesting opportunity. What we're going to go through tonight is what I call mapping your exit strategy. And there's going to be about five exits as I see as part of this process, with the ultimate destination as your retirement. Most people that own a business, eventually that's what they want to do, is sell their business and retire. And we'll go through some of the details. The 5 steps really are, first you got to decide, is this really the time you want to sell the business? Then what is the exit planning process, which there's a lot involved with it. And hopefully along the way, if you give yourself enough time, you can do things to your business to maximize the business value so that when you do sell it, you can get the top dollar for it. And then finally, once you're at that point, then we prepare the business for sale. There's a lot of preparatory work that you should be doing. And then finally is the deal process, which is not a simple process for most people. So that's what we're going to go through tonight. The first step is making the decision whether or not you want to sell. And before we get into the key questions you want to be asking yourself, let me give you a little information about the demographics right now. Looking around the room, I think there's a lot of you that are, like myself, baby boomers. And right now there's 70 million of us in the US that are baby boomers. And every day, 11,000 of us are turning 65. Of that, there's a lot of baby boomer business owners. Say that 10 times fast. Every 57 seconds, one of us baby boomer business owners are turning 65 as well. And when you look at all the numbers, it's going to represent about 12 million businesses in the U.S., small businesses in the U.S., that will be transitioning themselves over the next 10 to 15 years. And that equates to about $10 trillion of the U.S. economy, of the assets. So it's quite significant when you think about it. One interesting thing is that if you look at who's buying most of these businesses today, it's interesting. It's the baby boomers. The younger baby boomers today are buying a majority of the businesses today with a plan of selling them in 10 to 15 more years. So it's the younger baby boomers buying out the older ones. So also, there's a lot of information. That's why I gave you handouts. I won't go through every single line. I'm going to try to hit the high points for you that I think what you want to take away tonight. In regards to those baby boomers, when you look at today's environment, you will see that this is probably the perfect storm of positioning yourself to sell you the business. You have interest rates that are very low, historically low. Yes, we're going to start seeing some bumps of it. They're saying 2 to 3 bumps this year from the Federal Reserve. But still, when you even add those in, it's still very low interest rates historically. You have low inflation, and capital gains rates are one of the lowest it's been. And that's going to be beneficial for you, the sellers, because there's probably going to be a significant amount of capital gains, hopefully, and you pay a lower tax rate on that than your ordinary income. Then you look at the business valuations. Right now, businesses are being valued significantly higher than they have historically. And the main reason it goes to the laws of economy, supply and demand. there are many more buyers out there in today's market than there are sellers. So when a good business hits the market, it usually sells pretty fast. And the key thing, it has to be a good quality business that's making money. But because of the supply and demand, you're seeing very high valuations. So if you're thinking about selling today versus 15 years from now, it's probably going to be better to sell earlier, because as more and more of us get older, we're going to be forced to sell our businesses. Therefore, there's going to be a glut of businesses on the market. So supply and demand it works, the law of supply and demand. Then the other thing is, right now the banks, a few years ago during the recession, you couldn't get money from a bank. The only people that were loaning money people that didn't need the money. Today, banks are looking for opportunities to lend money. And the SBA, especially using SBA financing, which guarantees usually 75% of that loan. So the banks say there's lower risk for us. And also the rules from the SBA have changed, where usually in the past they were looking only at hard assets. What assets can they take back if you go bad on the loan? Today they're looking at cash flow as well. So if you have a business that's doing nice cash flow plus some hard assets, the buyer is going to have a better time getting a favorable note. In real estate, you always hear the term location, location, location. In selling your business, it's really timing, timing, timing. So, when you start thinking about your horizon, keep that in mind. So, some of the key questions you need to be asking yourself: is this the time I want to sell? I think these are three or four of the key questions to be asking yourself. Number one, have you achieved your goals that you set out for your business and yourself? If so, that may be a good time to start looking at selling. How much longer do you want to be working in the business before you retire? And then you have to look at the financial side, is what type of after-tax income do you need to support yourself in retirement? And then you look at, can the business support that, based upon the valuation? And finally is the decision of who do you want to sell it to? There's a whole bunch of people you can think about selling to, whether it's a third party, whether you have a family member that may look at taking over the business, or some key employees. There's a couple of very successful businesses in Traverse City that has gone ESOP, where employees have bought it out. That's a very complicated, but it's a very useful tool for some businesses. So the other questions you have to ask yourself, and I'm not going to go through all these, is do you find yourself stuck in the business? I think the number one question out of all these things here, the net, is do you still have the fire in the belly that makes you go to work every day? If you don't have that fire in the belly and you're basically letting the business just run on its own, or you're starting to see some decrease in the business, whether it's sales or profitability, and you've lost that drive, that's something you really need to think about, because people want to buy successful businesses. You don't want to be buying a business, like the old expression is, you don't want to, catch a falling knife. Well, the same thing here with businesses. Do you find yourself, besides the lack of passion, are you using your business as your personal piggy bank? As a small business owner, we know we all like to, get the lease cars for the family members, the cell phones, insurance, and all these things that. Is it necessary to operate the business? Probably not. So if you're using it as your personal piggy bank, you want to start rethinking that strategy as you start preparing your business for sale, and I'll go through that a little bit more later. Are you not thinking strategically in the business? You're just tactically, playing block and tackle every day, those type of things. So you can go through these questions, but you have to ask yourself these questions and be honest with yourself, because it's only you that's going to feel the effects of not being honest. Okay, the other thing, thinking about the reality for the business owner. Eventually, it's inevitable that you're going to get rid of your business one way or another. You're either going to sell it, unfortunately the worst thing that could happen is you die, and what happens to your business. So eventually you're going to be, the business is going to transition or close. And so you got to think about that. 80% of the business owners that sell their business, they're planning on retiring. They're not serial entrepreneurs. Buying one business, selling it, buying another business. Majority of us business owners, that's not what we do. I think there are a couple exceptions. The things you want to be thinking about when you think about the sale of your business is how much is your business part of your nest egg, your net worth. On average, a business owner, 50 to 75% of their net worth is tied up in their business. And so if that's, and with the remainder investments, real estate, but it's a big chunk of usually most business owners' retirement. And the other thing you need to do is, do you have a good idea what the value of your business is? Most people do not have a very good idea what the value is. They don't really look at that very often. And finally, I would say that in this slide is, you usually only have one chance to monetize your business. So you only sell it once. And so you want to make sure that when you do it right. Okay, we're on to the second exit of this highway, the actual process that you're looking at. It's a pretty big process when you really think about it from the very beginning. First thing you have to do is you look at your personal objectives. You know, what's important to you? What are those objectives? Then you got to look at both your personal and business financial resources. What is there? And then you want to start focusing on, when you make these plans, is how do I maximize the value of the business? And giving yourself enough time ahead, typically 3 to 5 years is not unusual. You do things to prepare your business for the sale to maximize your value. The other thing you want to be looking at is business continuity. In the case that some uneventful thing happens, will your business continue? So what you want to be doing during this period of time is trying to reduce the dependency of the business on you, as well as some other key people. If you have key employees that without that one person, you can't be in business, and it's not you, you got to look at some ways to reducing that dependency. Then you go back to what we saw in the earlier chart. Who do you want the business to be sold to? Do you have a family member, key employees, or a third party? I will tell you, when you start thinking about family members, key employees, you have to ask 2 key questions to determine if that's a good process to go through. Number 1 is, does that person or persons have the ability to not just manage the company, but actually lead the company? There's a big difference between leading and managing. You can manage for today, but you can't lead for the future. Second thing you have to be thinking about is, since this is your retirement, do they have the financial resources to be able to buy the business for the down payment, as well as get the financing to secure the purchase of the business? A lot of times when you're selling it to family members, guess who the bank is? It's usually the business owner. So this is your retirement. You probably need these funds right away. You want the cash. So you just have to have those honest questions with those key employees or family members. That all builds into building a personal wealth and estate planning. Working with your professionals there to, does this all make sense, the timing and so forth. By doing that, you build that comprehensive exit plan, which all these things are a component of. Then you start actually preparing your business for sale, and we'll talk a lot about that. You'll hear me say the word preparing quite a bit. I think it's probably one of the key words in this presentation is that's the essence. You're not preparing. And then finally, it's actually the deal process, making the decision to sell and then putting it in the market and closing. So most business owners, people laugh at this, but most business owners spend more time planning their next family vacation than they do planning the exit of their business, which is their largest asset. And it's not because they're not intelligent or they don't have the desire to do, is they just don't know where to start and where to begin the process. So they're looking for help. And then you think about it, is when a lot of people go through strategic planning or business planning, most people spend 80 hours developing those plans. Especially, I know a lot of people that go for bank loans and they're looking for a business plan. They'll spend 80 hours putting those together, but they'll spend 6 hours planning the exit. And one of my favorite sayings from Yogi Berra is, if you don't know where you're going, you may end up someplace different. So you want to figure out where you want to be. So in regards to the business transition itself, I don't know, let me just ask a question. How many people have a formal written plan of how to exit their business? Not one person. Well, studies said that there was only 9% that actually wrote it down, have a business plan documented. 33 said, I thought about it, I have an informal plan, it's in my head, but, and the rest of the people said no, no plan at all. Then you look at, the question is, how important is the funds from retirement, from your business for your retirement? If you take the critical, the very important, and the important, it comes out to 63%. So this is not an insignificant thing that you have to be working on. Then the question is what do you want to do? What's most important for you in making the decision to sell? The number one thing is gain the most for the business, maximizing business value, followed by minimizing your tax liability to Uncle Sam in the state. And finally is the decision of control of how and when and who the business is going to go to. One other thing that I thought was interesting in this study is the expectation is when you sell the business to especially a third party is, are you willing to do some seller financing? And I will tell you that you should, only 32% said, yes, I'm willing to do seller financing. I would say you want to think about that because SBA requirements do usually require the seller to have some skin in the game. The other thing is, if you want the most money for your, the most cash out of your business up front, you're going to have a lower value. So if you want it all 100% cash, you probably aren't going to get the highest value for your business. That's part of the negotiation. The other thing I can recommend is you want to build your team of professionals around you. There's a lot of things going on here through this process, and you look at all the professionals. You got your CPA, your attorneys, you got your financial advisors, because once you get once you sell the business, you're going to get this pot of money. What do you want to do with it? How are you going to plan for that? So those people should be involved. You got insurance you want to deal with. Then you got people like myself that does business brokerage and doing business valuations. Those people. None of us, not one of us, can do it all. And so you want to build that team of professionals, and you want to build a team that they work together. A couple of things I will tell you is most of us have a CPA and an attorney that we like, we dealt with. You have an attorney that's done some collections for you. You have a CPA that does great on your books. But the thing is, you have to ask them honestly, have you done business transitions before? If you haven't done business transitions before, you may want to seek out other professional advisors for this one transaction. It's like you go to the doctor and they say you need surgery. Would you rather go to a general surgeon or would you rather go to a specialist? And there are a lot of tax implications in regards to selling your business and how it's sold. And so that's where having a CPA that's an expert in this industry or in this process is beneficial. The other thing is you want to make sure that your professionals, especially attorneys and CPAs, that they want to work towards a win-win situation. Selling your business to somebody, it's going to be some give and take. It's a negotiation. What's the prices going to be? What's the terms going to be? Things like that. A lot of attorneys and CPAs always like to find the reasons to say no because it's lower risk and they don't lose a client, those type of things. So you want to really, force everybody to get around the table together and say, we're working together with the end result. We want to transition our business. So, getting to the question of who do you want to sell the business to? There are pros and cons to each one, and I'm not, it's small type, that's why you have the handout. The key things here is selling to a third party, you're most likely going to get the top dollar for it. Number one, most likely you're going to get the top dollar. You're going to be out of it. Once it's sold, the likelihood is your risk is much lower because you're no longer owning the business. And I would say you reduce a lot of the risks associated with selling your business. The cons are that it could take a long time, going out and find that buyer. There is a lot of time involved once you find the buyer, going through that process and going through what they call due diligence, where they're inspecting your financials, they're making sure that you were honest to them before they actually write you the check. That could be a very frustrating and time-consuming process. And so, it's not going to be a simple thing. Plus, you still have to be running the business because if the deal falls through, you still have to have a business to go back to. Selling to family members or key employees, it's great because they probably already know the business. They're well informed. The only problem is going back to do they have the cash? Most likely when you sell to a family member or a key employee, you're still going to be involved in the business for some point, because usually the payout is going to take you a longer time to get your money, and you still have, and sometimes it's tied to financial performance. So if the business starts not doing well, you may not get what you expected. The nice thing about selling it to a family member or a key employee, is that you have more flexibility in structuring the deal. When do you want to exit the business? Who's going to be in control? How is it going to be from tax point of view? You have a lot more control when you're selling it to somebody you already know. So now we're on to our third exit in this process, maximizing the business value. The first step is getting a handle how much your business is worth. And the way you do that is by doing a business valuation and getting some professionals to do that with you. What it does is establishes a baseline. There are some businesses that do business valuations every year. They want to track their performance. How are they doing? As I mentioned earlier, if you sell it via ESOP, it's actually required that they do an annual valuation. That's the way they determine what the value for each of the employees is. By going through this process, you identify what is actually going to be sold and what's going to be part of the business. You get a very good understanding of how your cash flow and your profitability runs through your business. So it's really it's checking under the hood of everything, and you really get a much better handle of where the business is, and you also get to see where the potential risks are going forward. Probably one of the most important things is it identifies what we call the drivers and distractors from your business. The drivers are the things that enhance the value. The detractors are things that obviously take away from the business. So going through this process, you see what those are, and you also get a better sense of how you're doing relative to your industry and to the marketplace and your competitors, because it does a comparison of how you are versus the industry. What is evaluation? It's both a product and a process. It's a very detailed process that a professional goes through to do this. And actually, I think the biggest value is doing the process and having you walk through it. The key thing is what is the ultimate goal of the valuation is giving you an idea of what the most probable price that someone's going to pay for your business. It's very similar to looking at real estate appraisal, but I think it's a much more detailed process, because when you're dealing with real estate, primarily you're looking at one of two things. You're looking at comps, or you're looking at, if you're doing commercial, the capitalization rate for the business. But when you're looking at a business, I'll get this the next slide, I think, there's intangibles you're dealing with. How valuable are your client set? How valuable is your technology, if you're proprietary technology or processes? So that's what the valuation tries to identify, those, and working with you. As I mentioned, what you're valuing in a business valuation is the tangibles, which is your hard assets, your real estate, your buildings, your leasehold improvements, your equipment, your inventory, all those things that you're at the end of the year, your CPA is asking you what the values of these things are, for taxes. The tough thing to value is the intangibles, what they call the goodwill or blue sky, what someone's willing to pay you. Because if someone buys your business based upon asset value, you're not getting a lot for it usually. So you want to get paid a higher multiple of your earnings, or however they determine the value, and most of it's going to be in the goodwill. Plus, if you have copyrights, patents, those relationships, how do you put value in that? And that becomes the tough thing. Valuations, I like to say, it's an art based upon science rather than a science based upon art. If you ask two valuation specialists to give you an opinion of valuation, you'll get 3 answers probably. So it's going to give you a good idea, but there's a lot of art to it as well. But part of it is the art. Then you make sure you're marketing it appropriately to get that valuation. So the value is really based upon who's looking at it. There are many different types of buyers out there. I I will tell you the two biggest ones that you find out there are the financial and the strategic buyer. The financial buyer is looking at it as an investment. I'm going to buy your business. I probably won't go there and work there every day. I'm going to go hire a manager to go manage it, and I'm going to go buy other things. So financial buyers are looking to get the best deal. So typically, they're not going to be the one that's going to pay the highest dollar. The strategic buyer is probably your competitors or businesses that have synergy with your business. By adding it to their business or to their portfolio, it's worth more to them than anybody else. And so the key thing is, if there's a way to sell it to strategic buyer, that's who you want to be selling it to. Then you get the lifestyle individuals. One of the things I said when I first got up here is, we see a tremendous opportunity of people downstate looking to buy up here. People are looking to buy a job, looking to buy a lifestyle. They're willing to make less money, but be their own boss, to be able to live in Northern Michigan, as an example. So those are the type of buyers, and to them that may be a strategic buy for them. So they still typically will pay a decent dollar because they're getting something from it more than just the business. There's other reasons why they're looking at your business. And then there's the related parties, the family members, as well as private equity companies. Well, that really goes with the financial buyer. So what are some examples of drivers, things that enhance the business? I don't know if you've ever heard the term EBITDA. EBITDA is earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's basically the profit from your business. It's typically used for larger corporations. For smaller businesses, they use a term called SDE, seller discretionary earnings, which is basically the profit of your business plus your salary, your income, and the things that the business has paid for you. But basically, the net of, if someone bought your business and didn't need to pay your salary, didn't need to pay all your expenses that weren't required for the business, that would be the seller discretionary earnings. So it's a little bit more than just profit of the business. It's profit plus your expense, your income from the business. So that's what they're looking at. The higher your EBITDA, the higher your profit, the higher the value. How's your customer list? Do you have product differentiation in both products and services? How are you different from the competition? How are you better? Your competitive position. Location. If you have your own building, some people value that if it's a franchise or a dealership. To some people, that's more valuable for them because it's a successful model. Examples of detractors, things that will lessen the value of the business, is if you have lawsuits, if you have environmental issues, any regulatory issues, those things, you're not keeping up with technology, you have outdated equipment, you're not doing maintenance, you have poor relationships with your vendors, you're in a weakened position relative to competition. Those are things that will detract from the value of your business. So now we're going to get into, there's going to be a lot of things on these charts of ideas. This is really just to give you some ideas of how you can look at your business and how can you start maximizing the value of your business by employing some of these these processes and suggestions. There's nothing here that's rocket science that you probably didn't already think about, but the key thing is having someone tell you about it and say, yeah, that's probably right. Something you will also see is that documentation, having things well documented, actually add value. And we'll go through that. First thing in financial operations, having very accurate, detailed financials and information about your business. If you can get audited financials, that's great, but most small businesses don't go through that process. You should be focusing on profitability rather than growing revenue or minimizing taxes. The number one thing when you start the years before selling your business, you want to be focused on anything you can do to increase profitability. Revenues are nice to see growing revenues, so long as there's equivalent growing in profits. Which would you rather buy, a $10 million business that's making $500,000 or a $1 million business, making $500,000? The $500,000, I'd rather have that higher ratio. That's a more attractive business for me. The other thing is what your role in the business. if the business can't survive without you, or you're involved in everything and you maintain all the relationships with the customers, the vendors, and so forth, you've got to find a way to get other people involved so that you can go away for 3 weeks on vacation to Costa Rica and the business will operate. If you can't do that, you're probably, the business is too reliant on you. Excuse me. Have you groomed a successor possibly? Someone that, a manager that can take over a lot of your roles. Developing your people, human resources. In the years prior, you want to be developing your people, again, to reduce the reliance on you. Anything you can do to reduce your labor, employee turnover. You went through tenure to be, have good tenure of your employees. Having people go in and out all the time is a distractor from your business. From an operational, have those processes, what you do, it's all in your mind. You've got to start writing that down so other people can do it and get other people involved. This is not the time to defer, preventative maintenance and updating technology. You want to stay with your industry, with your company. You don't want to be saying, I'm going to hold back on expenses here because if someone has to buy your business and invest a lot of capital to get it back to where it should be, that's going to be a distractor from the business. Inventory control, obviously increasing your inventory turns if you're in a business that has inventory. Competition, you want to be the leader. Anything you can do to improve your competitive position will enhance the value to your business. If you can think of new products and new services to be offering, this is a time to be doing it as you prepare to sell your business. And finally, customers are number one. You want to have good retention, good loyalty, but you also, a lot of people have businesses where they have one client that's 20% of their business. Well, that sounds great that they're such a great customer, but the problem is if you lost it, what happens to your business? So you want to reduce the reliance on that one customer. And if you have a handful of customers that make up 80% of your business, just as bad. So you want to be spreading that out as much as possible. This is a time where you're going to be developing and growing your client base. And also, maximizing your channels. If there's other ways to get your products and your services out to market, this is the time to maximize all your channels for sales. Then suppliers. If you have one supplier that's your key supplier, is there a way to get additional suppliers? Because if that relationship goes bad, how are you? Is this a good time to be negotiating with your suppliers to get you a reduced cost? So negotiating. The other thing is that relationship with that supplier mostly with you? Again, this is a good time to start transitioning these relationships to other people. I can't tell you how many customers that we've talked to or that are thinking about selling a business say, well, I'm going to cut back on advertising and marketing. That's the last thing you want to be doing. Is that you want to be increasing your brand, improving your brand out there, and having your name out there, because obviously sales get generated by advertising and marketing. So this is not the time to be cutting back here. And finally, is if you have any legal issues, any regulatory issues, anything like that, insurance issues, get those resolved and out of the way. Because the last thing, people don't want to, even though most people when they buy the business don't assume those liabilities, that's always a concern. It's a red flag. So get rid of any of those type of issues. So now we're on to fourth exit, is preparing your business for sale. The reasons why you want to start early in this process is it gives you more time to optimize the value of your business, doing these things that we just talked about, giving yourself more time to do that. The other thing is you want to be able to be opportunistic in determining when you want to sell the business. You want to be selling the business when you're doing well, the industry is doing well, the economy is doing well. You don't want to be selling it during a recession or when your industry is having a downside or a bad reputation. So you want to be opportunistic. If this is a good time for your industry and good time in the economy, that's going to enhance your value and it's going to be easier to sell the business. Let's see. So I think we'll talk about a lot more preparation. In regards to what you need to have prepared for your business, in preparing your business for sale, a lot of this stuff, this is nothing of a surprise. The only thing that I will tell you is some of the things are like business overview, company history. This is a good time to sit back and reflect and do some narrative, do some writing, because you want to be able to articulate your business and you want to spend some time preparing that up front. And so this is a good time to be creative on a weekend or whatever and start writing these narratives down, because that will be used to market your business eventually. Let's see, any of it? Okay. So, how do you prepare the business? And you've heard me say this many times. A lot of these are going to be redundant, but I think the more you hear from me, the more important it is. You want to start early. Any dependencies that you have in your business, as I mentioned, whether it's a customer, a vendor, employees, or yourself, you want to deal with those. You want to look at any way you can get cost efficiencies. If you can see areas to trim your business, if there's people that you have working for you that really aren't contributing that much, it's a good time to trim that fat. As I say, do you have the right people in the right seats in the bus? If not, then change seats or ask them to get off the bus. Have strong processes and financial controls of your business. Understand how your money's flowing. Something that I haven't used this term yet, recasting financials. As I mentioned, is a lot of us that are small business owners use our business as our personal piggy bank. And that's fine, so long as your CPA says it's okay, as my CPA says, it's okay to be a pig, but don't become a hog because then you get slaughtered. Well, during these times, when we're running the business, we run a lot of expenses through the business because we want to minimize taxes. Well, when you're starting to prepare your business for sale, you're not focused on taxes. You should be focused on profitability. So, and when people come and value your business, they will do some recasting. But if you have such a high amount of expenses being run through your business, the person that's looking at the business may not give you the full value of that. So the more expenses that you're running through, the more you have to recast, the more suspect the business is. I hear this quite often, that there's a lot of people that have cash businesses. Said, oh, my business is worth so much, I take $80,000 a year cash out of the business, and I don't report it. Well, that's great. Just don't tell me, don't tell somebody else. But you can't get any value for that because who's going to trust you? How do you even prove that? So, so this is the time where you start really thinking about running things through the business as it's supposed to be. Identifying those assets that you may have, if you have some equipment or whatever that you're not really fully utilizing, sell it, get the cash for it. This is also a time that you want to be still articulating your vision. Your employees don't know you're thinking about selling probably. And if you're thinking about telling them, don't. You want it as confidential as possible. So you still need to be articulating your vision for them so they can keep on working towards the future, because you want to develop a growth plan that's both realistic and supportable, because when you are talking to a potential buyer, they want to buy a business if there's opportunities to grow the business. So you want to have ideas for them before they buy the business, because that's one of the things they're going to be valuing, is people will buy growth plans. And so you want to have those well documented and be working towards those. Already talked about the staff. Separating any financial or family issues from the business. If you got things going on, people have unrealistic expectations, these are the times that you're going to be dealing with these issues. You don't want this taking place when you're preparing to actually selling your business. Working capital. I say understand it, manage it, and reduce it. When someone comes and buys your business, they're going to have to put a fairly significant down payment down. So that's going to require cash. They're going to go get a bank to finance the rest of it. If your business requires a lot of working capital to support it during, if you have a very seasonal business and you're buying it during a bad season, you're going to need, the person buying it's going to need it to get them to the peak season. That becomes additional cash that they may not be able to come up with, or they have to get a line of credit. So the minimum, if you can reduce the amount of money that someone needs to put into the business besides what they're buying the business for, that's ideal. So you want to reduce your working capital. If you know of any deal killers out there, you know them better than anybody else, handle them, get rid of them. Also, this is a time to determine what are you really selling. You know, you just bought a truck, a new van for your business. You really like it. You don't have to sell it. You know, it's your business. You can determine what you want to sell. You have a building. Do you want to sell the building? Do you want to lease the building? I will tell you, your businesses are more attractive when there's real estate associated with it, when you give them an option to buy it or to lease it. Banks love when the real estate's part of the deal because then they have a hard asset to go after. But you have to, a lot of people that are buying businesses want their real estate investment as well. So having that as available as an option, I think enhances the value of your business and will make it more attractive. But some people don't have the cash. So the willingness to lease it to them and get another income stream and have the first rights of refusal. So that gives you more flexibility. As I already talked about timing, you know, you got to you got to time it to your market that's going to be most beneficial for you. And finally, you know, seeking that professional advice. Don't try to do it yourself. No problem. Then it comes down to is how you're going to sell the business. I don't know if you've heard the term asset sale and stock sales. Most small businesses are going to be sold via an asset sale. And what that really means is that, let me get a drink of water. An asset sale is basically someone's going to buy all the assets of your business and whatever the price you come up with. They're not going to assume any liabilities of your business going forward. You still have liabilities from prior before you sell it. You're going to take the cash out of the till, the accounts receivable. You're going to have to pay all the accounts payable. They're going to take everything going forward. Most businesses are so that way. The other thing that in an asset sale is there's a little negotiation in regards to the value of your assets. The person buying your business wants your assets to be as high as value as possible because they have more to depreciate. You want it as low as possible so you don't have, that's, typically that's what you want is low value when you sell the business on the assets. That is an area of negotiation. I will also tell you before you make the decision whether or not you're doing an asset sale or stock sale, you want to be consulting your CPA, again, that specialist, because he can advise you on whether or not what is the best approach for you to sell the business. A stock sale, people will say, well, I'm a small business, we can't sell the stock, in the company, if you're an S Corp or a C Corp. But I would tell you that it makes a lot of sense in some industries, especially regulated industries where licensing is required. Sometimes I would tell you the state of Michigan does a very poor job when you're in a regulated industry where I'm selling it this day. Unfortunately, that person that buys the business can't get their license until everything gets titled over to them, and that could be a 45-day process. And so that person buying the business may have 45 days before they can't earn anything. Legally, they can't be operating. We sold a trucking company last year, and it was planned to be an asset sale. Then we realized there was licensing issues that the person buying wasn't going to be operating for 45 days. Plus, because the guy that was buying it didn't have any industry experience, his insurance was going to go from $125,000 a year to $450,000 a year. So that was a good chunk of the profit of the business. And so by doing a stock sale, that alleviated that, because when you do a stock sale, the company doesn't change. You have the same tax ID number. You have this. The only thing that's changing is the shareholders of the business. And so the insurance company didn't need to know about the change of shareholders. And it really made a difference. The other thing is if you are in a business that you have contracts with your clients, well, if you're doing an asset sale, you have to inform those clients that we are changing hands. We're a different company. So the contract that you have is not going to be valid for this new company. So by doing a stock sale, those contracts are still valid. Nothing needs to change there. There is a unique thing that we've used in the past, which is a little bit of a combination of both. And most CPAs and attorneys don't know about it, or if they know about it, they really haven't used it much. It's called an Section 338H10. It's an IRS code which basically says, I want to sell my business as a stock sale, but I would like to treat it from a business point, from a tax point of view as a asset sale. So legally, it's a stock sale. From tax purposes, both the buyer and the seller have to agree to do it as a stock sale for tax purposes. And so you get the best of both worlds sometimes. Again, typically most small businesses don't go that way, but it does make sense depending upon the company. So we're at the final stage of our process, the actual deal process. Before actually talking about all the steps there, I think give you some ideas about where the market is. This is a busy chart. I'm going to focus really on this side here initially, is what the net of this chart is saying is if your business value is high, the higher your business value, the higher the multiple that you'll get for your business. And this is using a multiple of EBITDA. So 2.6 times your EBITDA, your profit, for businesses that are under $500,000. Whereas you look at a business between $5 and $50 million, their average multiple is 5.4. So the net is increase your business value, get the higher multiple. Then when you look at who's buying the businesses right now, is first-time buyers of a business really outnumber those in the under $1 million range in valuation to the $2 to $5 million range. Strategic buyers are heavily oriented in the $1 to $2 million value businesses. The businesses that are between the $5 and $50 million businesses, which probably not most of us aren't in that, half of those businesses are being sold to private equity companies. And you'll be kind of surprised that even a small business, we all heard this private equity, think about Wall Street and all that. There are a lot of private equity firms that are looking for small businesses. That's their portfolio, is buying small businesses. And again, they're using it as an investment. So don't be totally shocked that there may be some interest from private equity groups for small businesses. In regards to the success rate of actually completing a deal, this is what most people don't like to know about. 78% of the businesses that are valued under that are under $500,000 do not sell. So the odds are, again, not great in the smaller businesses. The success rate of businesses that overall, the entire, look at all businesses out there, only 1 in 4 actually do sell. So it doesn't sound very good. But again, if you do all this, and the reason why is a lot of these people that are selling businesses haven't done the preparatory work. They haven't positioned their business appropriately. So again, preparation will increase those odds. But overall, most people don't. If your business has sales of $10 million, 1 out of 3 will sell. And businesses over $10 million, 50% of them will sell. A key thing is preparing your business up front. So what is the deal process? It's a planning phase, it's the search phase, finding the buyer, and actually making the deal happen, and then you got to go to closing. There's a lot of steps in here. The planning phase, if you ask me what would be an ideal amount of time, it'd be 3 to 5 years ahead of time you want to start doing this planning. The searching for the buyer, that can be any amount of time depending. The higher the quality of the business, the more likely, the faster you'll be able to get a buyer. And as right now, as I mentioned, is that the market is very hungry for good businesses to be bought. The deal making, there's a whole bunch of things. There's lots of negotiation. There's actually coming up with a deal that everybody can shake hands on may not be the easiest. And then finally, you get to the closing and the due diligence phase. And that's the most painful phase. Is once you have a deal, you agreed on a price, you agreed on the terms. Now you got to go through due diligence, where the bank wants to know everything about you because they're going to make a loan based upon your business. They want to inspect everything. You got environmental studies, you got appraisals, you got business valuations that the bank requires to be a third party. So it's just a very long processing. It'd be very frustrating. The advice is, is you're going to have to deal with it, but keep on running your business. Don't take your pedal off, the foot off the pedal from running your business, because if it doesn't happen, you don't want to be in worse shape. And finally, you get to the point of closing. The average time it takes to sell a business in the U.S. right now is somewhere between 9 and 18 months. And I know it's a big range. We've done deals that actually closed within 4 months, from point of getting a listing to the point of signing in the thing and shaking hands and being at the closing table. 4 months. That's highly unusual, but it's not impossible. Again, there was a lot of preparation up front, and they did a good job. So, some of the common pitfalls. These are the things to avoid. Is number one, trying to do it yourself without any help. Not having that team of professionals around with you that you built, the superstars. Starting the process with unrealistic expectations, whether that's timing, how long it's going to take to sell, what the structure is going to look like, being unrealistic, how much money you're going to have to, do seller financing. So I don't want to do any seller financing. Getting the timing wrong, doing it when the market's going down. Interesting enough, incorrectly valuing your company. I will tell you, when we talk to people that are not really in the position of selling businesses, they just want to get an idea what their business is, and you ask them what do you think the value is, they will almost always, we're finding that a majority of them actually overvalue their business. Hey, my business is so good, it's worth so much. Then you go to the person that's ready to sell the business, I'll give you an example of this trucking company we just sold last year. The very first meeting, we went out to lunch with them, and we asked them, what do you think your business is worth? What would you be willing to take? They said, we'd be happy with $1 million. I said, okay. We did the valuation. We sold it for $2.7 million. So the thing is that it's not intuitive. Most people say, I would never undervalue my business. Well, if you don't know how to do it and you don't know how to relate it to, that's the time when you make that mistake, and you can leave money on the table. Not spending enough time in preparation. I think I've heard that a few times. Preserving confidentiality. I will tell you, you do not want to let your especially your employees know that you're selling. You don't want your clients knowing, because guess what? They may look elsewhere. Hey, they're not really serious in this business, or I better look for a new supplier because I may not like new owner. Your vendors. Some vendors you have a personal guarantee with. When they find out that you're selling the business, they may reduce your credit. So you want to keep this as confidential as possible. Another story just happened is that we had a business that we actually sold up here. The owner, we were working with for 18 months. We had the business sold 3 times. And it was almost always under contract, but one thing happened or another. We finally did sell it. 18 months later, it was sold, and the owner of the business kept confidentiality. The employees, when they found out about it, said, I can't believe you're selling the business, the day of the announcement. What was interesting, he had a girlfriend, and during 18 months, his girlfriend had no idea the business was for sale. And I'm sending emails every day. We're talking, and see my number coming across on his cell phone. She had no idea until 3 days before closing when he told her. So that's a good story for keeping confidentiality, but I would highly recommend that you keep this very quiet. Not pre-qualifying your prospects looking for your business. Remember, when you get someone that's interested in your business, they want to see all your financials. They want to know everything about you. They want your tax returns. You don't want to give any information, especially if it's a competitor, until you know they have the ability to close on the deal. So checking to make sure they have the money in the bank, that they can have pre-approved for a note at the bank, understanding that before you give any information away, and also having a non-disclosure agreement that has teeth to it. You just don't want to be doing this without some advice in regards to non-disclosure agreements and understanding whether or not they have the capability of closing. Having accurate sales data, financial data, having that readily available. there's an expression in the business is time is the death to all deals. And so part of the thing is, if you think about due diligence, someone buying a business, you want to have pretty much the answer to every question that they may come up with and a request for any information. You want it readily available, because the longer it takes from answering their question to, from getting the question and answering it and providing the information, the longer that takes, the more likely that something's going to happen, that they'll find that the deal doesn't happen. So having everything up front really makes a difference. And finally, are you really ready to sell the business? Making that decision. We've heard of a circumstance where they were at the closing table, husband and wife owned the business, and at the closing table, the wife said, I really don't want to sell. And that was not a good day. So you got to make sure that when you're at this point that you're ready to sell. So that's what I got. Thank you very much for your time.